Welcome to Active Travel Cafe for 3rd of March 2026. I'm Robin Tucker, your host, and welcome to Leigh Gravenor from Grid Smarter Cities, who's going to be talking to us tonight about curbside management and the many demands of activity on the curbside and how to handle them better. We're looking forward to his presentation shortly. As ever, we'll start with the local news from places near you or things of national importance that you've spotted. And who do we have who wants to give us a bit of news? Okay, I am going to, while you're considering, I'm going to share a little bit that I spotted on our favourite GB News today. How's that? Motorists switch to using public transport to avoid paying £5 daily congestion charge. This, of course, refers to Oxford, the city near me, and that's exactly how the congestion charge in Oxford is meant to work. Motorists are meant to switch to public transport or active travel to avoid the congestion charge. So thank you, GB News, for confirming that it's working in exactly the way it should. That's great support and evidence. So really happy to see that coming from obvious supporters of the scheme. Fantastic. So that is looking good. Do we have any other news, or should we go on to the presentation? Very quiet news week this week. Okay, right, Leigh, you're going to have bonus time this week. We'll go straight over to the presentation.
Yeah, I'll try to fill it. Let me just share my screen. Great. Can everyone hear me okay? It's all working? Yep. Okay, yeah. So I want to talk to everyone today about the a curbside view. So why curbside management matters for active travel, as Robin said. Um, just a bit of background on why I'm now currently in curbside management, where I've sort of come from in my career. About 14 years ago, I was a volunteer for Sustrans, and that's sort of where I kind of started my journey in active travel because I was just a keen cyclist before then. But Sustrans paid for my training as a cycling instructor. I did that for almost a year, moved into local government in a cycling officer role for London Council, did that for a few years, then became a cargo bike courier with Pedal Me. So I was training cargo bike couriers and doing deliveries around London, as well as acting as the head of HR and helping out everywhere I could with that startup. And since then, I've gone on to being a cargo bike consultant and a promoter of sort of sustainable freight. And my most recent role since June last year is working with Grid Smarter Cities, promoting their bookable loading bays, which is part of this whole sustainable freight world I am working in. And as Robin said, I'm currently at the Northeast Parking Show in Durham, taking part in the wonderful world of parking discussions with local councils and various businesses. So my aim over the next 10 or so minutes was one, to keep you engaged with this what some might think is a dull and technical subject of curbside management. And two is to persuade you of the importance of getting into the nitty gritty of curbside management and the fact that it has the power to, I think, make or break active travel visions. So just what is the curb as a starting point? I'm sure we all know, but just to reiterate, it's a valuable, often overcrowded boundary separating vehicles from pedestrians. And it's where activities like parking, loading, bus stops, cycling access, street trees, drainage, and much, much more is managed. I think it's important to note at this stage is that obviously the curb has all these different activities and has a key role to play in achieving the goals that we all share probably on this call. Safer streets for walking and cycling and wheeling, cleaner air, quieter neighborhoods, less car dominance, more space for people, and a fair use of a limited space. Apologies for all the terrible AI images I've generated here. I do have some of these in photo form, but probably not all of them. So I will, over the years, I think, replace these with actual photos. Yeah, apologies. But I think just making it clear that the curbside is what I'd like to call the front line of active travel. A lot of the problems with active travel happen at the curbside rather than the centre of the road. It's not a back office transport issue. It is the front line. So you'll recognise a lot of these scenes, vans parked on pavements, making it difficult to pass for people wheeling or with mobility issues potentially, or vans parked halfway in cycle lanes while they're doing their unloading, blocking, making it difficult maybe for those who are less experienced cyclists, let's say, or just difficult for everybody to use the facilities that the way they're supposed to be used. We've also got in the top right the fact that idling vehicles are polluting the air around us, blocking crossings in the bottom left, maybe blocking access to cycle parking, or damaging some of the infrastructure that is being put in for active travel. So the question is who is the curb really for? Obviously, I've got lots of images here of different uses by the curbside, so seating, cycle hire, cargo bikes, deliveries, car parking, trees, all sorts. It's a scarce public asset. It's hotly contested. It's politically powerful. And how local authorities prioritize activities on it it's a value choice. So I think it's important to remember. Will they prioritize specific social, environmental, or economic outcomes over the traditional, almost exclusive use of the curbside for just parking cars? That's a conscious decision by a local authority to shift from just storage of vehicles to an active, productive, and inclusive use of public space. So you're probably going to recognize some of these stats that I'm just going to pull out just to make clear this point. In London, roughly 42% to 46% of households don't own a car. And the fact that the on-street parked cars take up roughly 10 Hyde Parks worth of land in London. It's estimated that the average car is parked 95% of the time. So it is really storage of vehicles that we're looking at here, not being useful in most of the time. And then, Como UK have said that a car club can replace 20 private cars. So again, I asked the question, who is the curb really for, when there's maybe not a big argument for just using the curb for storing cars. But bear in mind, I've got a stat here from the RAC, is that English councils made 2.16 billion from car parking in 2024 to 2025. So there is invested interest in how you use the curb and that public asset. So yeah, what does the future hold? We have a vision for livable cities with streets that feel pleasant and safe for people, sustainable transport, efficient use of urban space, and equitable use of that space. But to what is on the horizon? I've got a lovely little poster here from Waymo, autonomous vehicles. They are here in London. I saw one last week in just off Regent Street. I mean, I'm sure there was a driver in it now, but I have to hold my hands up. I've actually used a Waymo in LA last year without a driver. They are everywhere in San Francisco. So they are coming, and the Autonomous Vehicles Act 2024 created the legal framework to support the deployment of autonomous vehicles in the UK. So there is a movement to roll them out. But where will those vehicles be parked? Where will they be pick up and drop off? How are we accommodating their use? And will they take trips away from public transport and active travel? Car clubs, obviously they feature very highly in local authority strategies. They reduce overall car use, they free up curb space by taking away parking from private cars. You reduce the need for private car parking. But we've seen recently Zipcar stop operations in the UK because of rising costs related to insurance, energy and parking. So how do we encourage car clubs? Where should they be located? I have some experience with Zipcar in that I used it last year, and I had to actually take my Brompton cycle 5 minutes to pick up the car, and then I was notified as I got near that the previous user hadn't returned it, so I had to cycle a further 5 minutes to the next Zipcar, which was left with parking tickets all in it and hadn't been cleaned. So my experience wasn't great. Meanwhile, private cars are parked down my street outside neighbours' houses. Very convenient for them to use. So again, that's a value choice of how we allocate the curb space there. EVs. So we've obviously got a big push in this country to roll out EV charging as we encourage people to switch to electric vehicles. Petrol and diesel vehicles, new ones are going to be stopped being sold by 2030, as we know. And plenty of funding is going towards private homeowners, businesses to install their EV charging points. Again, increases in their grants. Apparently, in total, 600 million was announced last year to accelerate the charging rollout. And that builds on the 100,000 additional new public chargers the government is already helping councils install in the coming years. And according to the UK government, a new charge point is popping up every half an hour. So that again is how some of our curb space is being allocated, whether rightly or wrongly, but there's something to bear in mind. The micromobility picture, sometimes framed as a problem rather than a solution. We can't deny that there are dockless bikes piling up in certain locations. They are incredibly convenient and flexible, so they do have loads of benefits for public use. But how do we manage them and create space for them while maintaining their convenience and flexibility? Do we have parking bays allocated to them or corrals, or are they put on pavements? And what are the impacts on other pavement users if we do that? Parklets. I've taken this image from the charity Possible. It's describes what a parklet is, but obviously there's lots of different forms. This one has seating, has community garden, on-street bike parking. It's accessible, and it's a hub for the neighbourhoods. There's ticks a lot of boxes in terms of providing for the local community and maybe a local business. Lots popped up during COVID. It's an international movement. I understand Hackney Council was the first local authority to introduce community parklet process in 2019, where the community could actually put forward proposals for and get put in parklets, and I believe Waltham Forest and Hounslow and Lambeth have all followed. But according to Possible, community parklets are not currently permitted by local authorities outside of London, although some councils have installed their own, working with local businesses and groups. Similarly, I've got LTNs here. Other brands are available if we don't call them LTNs. We're giving space here back to communities, reducing the motor vehicle dominance, but like parklets, they need to gather community support. They need to go through consultation. They probably need a change of traffic orders, and they will usually involve some reallocation of curb space to accommodate things like barriers or planters in this image. Delivery robots, maybe a bit futuristic, and I don't know if these are ever going to take off, but they are operating in places like Milton Keynes. They are in America and other places as well. Do they go on the pavement? Do they go in cycle lanes? How fast do they go? How big are they? Who has priority? How will they navigate? So these are questions which we probably should ask now, because the technology is there, and if they are going to feature on our roads, how do we accommodate them? Similarly, cargo bikes, a personal favorite of mine, obviously, but what is still a bike? They are getting larger. Some of them, they're 4 wheels, quadricycles. They can weigh up to 500 kg with a trailer. Should they be allowed in some pedestrianised areas? I have taken a cargo bike down a canal towpath in London. Should that be allowed? Potentially not in certain circumstances. And do they need their own space at curbsides for loading and unloading if we have an image of last mile deliveries and micro hubs that are going to service city centres? Will we have to have dedicated locations for those? Like in New York have corrals for cargo bikes, last mile deliveries. And finally, amongst all of this, how do we ensure spaces safe for active travel? So where do the cycle lanes fit, or wider pavements and things like that? So this is where curbside management comes in. We've talked about why curb is so important for active travel, but how do we manage it? It's about deciding who can use the curb, when they can use it, and for what purpose. It's not just parking, it's not anti-cycling, it's a tool. So I think that's important to remember. It's a tool to prioritize walking, cycling, and public transport if it's used correctly. We shouldn't just think of it as parking bays. And we do this through traffic orders, physical signs and lines, and other physical infrastructure. However, I think at this stage it's important to point out there are problems with the traditional signage and markings to manage the curbside. As we've just seen, there's lots of future development. There's growth in deliveries, ride-hailing, micromobility, and some of these old systems don't accommodate all of that. So fixed signs can also not adapt to times of day or changing needs. Enforcement is probably underfunded. It can be a bit blunt and inconsistent, and people don't always understand complex rules as well. So I'd like to talk about the digital frontier. I don't know if people know the film Tron, one of my favorite films, but they talk about where this graphic might get annoying for people because it just keeps going. But I'll try and get off this slide quicker so you don't have to keep watching it. But this graphic's from the film Tron. It's a digital representation of city streets. So in the film, they refer to the grid as a digital frontier, an evolving digital universe based on our own world, which it was sci-fi, it's fantasy, but actually it's not that far from the truth. We are using data and technology to map, monitor and manage our street space dynamically, transparently, fairly, and in real time. So we are creating digital twins of our world, our cities. We're using things like LiDAR, light detection and ranging, and cameras to map and create accurate digital representations of our streets and urban networks. That's allowing us to synchronize in real time our systems to improve efficiency, network efficiency. So that could be like traffic lights, could be our power networks, anything like that. We can do simulations. So if we are going to change new infrastructure, we can test the potential impact of that. We can test emergency response scenarios, and we can also look to optimize our networks for sustainability, reducing emissions and energy consumption. DTROs, so digitalization of our traffic orders. Again, this could seem very technical and dry, but it's important to note that it's now a legal requirement on the DFT to start digitalizing traffic orders. Lots of local authorities have already done so. Many more are in the process of doing so. When the traffic orders are digitalized, they're usually map-based rather than paper-based, making it easier to visualize traffic regulations and also amend them and interact with them. So there's an improved efficiency. It's quicker to update and more cost-effective than paper traffic orders. It's an enhanced communication, making traffic, parking, and road closure data more accessible to not only the people in the local authority, but the general public. You can do real-time updates if there are closures happening or temporary blocks to certain parking, let's say, and you can do that in real time. There's integration with other digital systems, so it might support navigation apps. They can interact with the traffic orders, and it also supports the transition to connected and autonomous vehicles. It also enhances public engagement. So if the public understand the traffic orders better, because the mapping and the various integrations that they're seeing on their own devices, there's better compliance and effective public consultation. Finally, on this slide, just wanted to mention about real-time data-driven insights, something that my company are particularly interested in as well. understanding real-time curbside use and demand allows us to transform street space from a static, underutilized asset into a dynamic revenue-generating resource. So, for example, you could do dynamic pricing for parking and dynamic regulations. So, parking space might be for EV charging at night, but it could be for restaurant seating during the day, or loading, or just general parking, or a parklet, something like that. So there's lots of benefits there. Move off that slide now, so that graphic stops. So what are the benefits for active travel? So I've got direct benefits here. There's fewer vehicles blocking cycle lanes and pavements. If you're managing your curbside more effectively digitally, you can ensure that the vehicles are not blocking cycle lanes, that they have their particular space, time and place. Clearer, more predictable street environments, that's another outcome there. Safer junctions, like we saw at the start, the picture of the blocked crossing, safer junctions, crossings and bus stops, and a space reallocation made enforceable, not just painted. That's an important point. Strategic benefits, we obviously want to achieve things like low traffic neighborhoods, active travel schemes. Once it's in the traffic orders, it's in the systems, then it's something that will make those schemes stick. It's supported operationally, not just a vision. Similarly, supports school streets and time closures, enables a permanent change from temporary trials, and provides data to defend schemes politically. I think that last point's really important. With all the digitalization going on, we're collecting lots and lots of data on usage of the curbside, and that can be very important when it comes to saying, especially say, for example, on the high street where businesses are saying, oh, we need these parking spaces. If you can point to the data you've collected over a temporary scheme, then you could say, well, actually, these parking spaces weren't used as much as you thought, and a lot of your customers are coming from elsewhere because of the data we've collected with various devices and tracking things. And just to summarize that, digital curbs turn active travel schemes from aspirations into operating systems. So it is about getting into that technical nitty-gritty to understand that active travel schemes do need to come into the operating side of things, how they operate in real life. So just some case studies here. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of the Lambeth curbside strategy. It's really good. I encourage you all to read it if you haven't. They have an aim to use 25% of their curbside for sustainable uses. That's 500. They have 579,000 linear meters of curbside they've calculated in Lambeth. That's basically from Lambeth to Edinburgh, stretched out end to end. But currently, they calculate 94% of their curbside is used just to manage vehicle parking, while only 60% of the households in Lambeth actually have a vehicle. So they're just trying to rebalance their curbside to meet the needs of their population and achieve some of their sustainability goals. First step is for them to understand their curbside, what restrictions they currently have, what are the current uses. So as a starting point, they have been working with a company called Appiway. Appiway have helped them map, visualize all their traffic orders, curbside restrictions across the entire borough. Yeah, that's the first point. That's made it easier for their designers and their enforcement teams. So their designers can now see, before coming forward with a vision, they can check the accurate data on what are the current curbside restrictions, what are the current traffic orders in that area. So when they're coming forward, they have a good up-to-date basis of what they can really achieve and what they will need to change with their designs. Equally for their enforcement teams, having that up-to-date data in their handheld devices, let's say if they're going around issuing penalty charge notices to vehicles, the integration with this kind of mapping data has been really useful for them to issue as PCNs with confidence that it can't be challenged because the data they have is there and accurate. An improved consultation process and public understanding. So something I mentioned before when we talked about the digital frontier and the grid, the slide, but this mapping is now used in the consultation. So if you go on to Appiway website. They have a website for Lambeth and other boroughs they're working with, and you can click on live consultations, and you will see the areas on the map which are live consultations. It could be putting in micro-mobility parking space. It could be changing, putting a parking or anything like that. And you can click on it, and it will tell you the outline of the traffic order that's changing, exactly what the design is, and you can comment on it through that website. And it makes it just far easier to understand the actual changes that are going to be being made. It's sort of the next step once you've gone past maybe the commonplace consultations where you look at vision documents. You're now looking at like the operational change on the ground. It's made the processing of traffic orders a lot quicker, so they reckon it's sped up the processing time by up to 50%, from 4 months around to 2 months. And they've been able to, the outcome of all of this is that it can be easier to achieve some of the aims that they have for their curbside strategy, putting in parklets, shared cargo bike, cycle parking. They can easier identify locations for those things and also engage people in consultation to put those in. This is the shameless plug slide for my company. There's another case study. So Grid Smart Cities are a company we're very interested in the sustainable freight side of things. The problem we've identified, I've got some stats here I'll share. The World Economic Forum, the 2020 report said that the demand for urban last mile deliveries is projected to grow by 78% globally by 2030. The UN projects that 68% of the world population will live in urban areas by 2050. These combined with other factors is leading to more congestion. It's increased air pollution, increased road danger. We're seeing development going in that has maybe afterthought around loading space, so it's not being considered. And then we also have a lack of data, so we don't necessarily know how the curbside is being used. And we see images like the one above where these vehicles are not using loading bays, they're parking on pavements doing deliveries, and it's an unmanaged environment. So it's unmanaged, unknown mess of activities, and that's something that we at Grid Smart Cities are trying to solve. So our solution is Curb. It's a booking platform, so it's basically loading bays bookable through a digital platform. It gives a dedicated time and space for the loading activities. So by doing that, we are freeing up the rest of the space for other activities. We have fewer vehicle miles and conflicts because these delivery vehicles are coming in. They know they got a booking slot. They don't have to circle the neighborhood looking for parking, which would lead to increased vehicle miles, increased air pollution, increased road danger, and all those things, and increased congestion. So we're improving the efficiency of the deliveries, improving the utilization and efficiency of the curbside. Reduced congestion, road danger, I said that. Frees up space for other uses. So basically we see our solution doing more with less. So you probably need fewer loading bays on a street because you're making more use of that space. You're not having all the vehicles turning up at the same time looking for the same loading space. They have their slots, so they can work around one another. And then the data, so at the minute, local authorities, unless they're sending teams down to go monitor a particular area and see how it's being used, they rely largely on penalty charge notices, so tickets issued to vehicles. They'll know then when a vehicle is using that space. But apart from that, they're a bit blind to how the curve's been used. With our system, they get to see all the bookings, so they'll see a vehicle type, and then also understand if it's a electric vehicle, petrol, diesel, if it's an HGV, LGV, cargo bike even, and they'll get a richer picture over time of how their curbside is being used, the vehicles that are going there, what times, what periods they're staying for, all of that stuff. So it gives them a lot more greater understanding of their street, and then also allows them to plan around it and hopefully dedicate more space to other uses like seating, greening, active travel. So yeah, just to summarize some of the key takeaways, the curb is a limited public space. The unmanaged demand leads to conflict, obstruction, and quality, as I've shown, which has can have a negative impact on active travel. The problem is not always caused by bad behavior alone. There's a lack of clear rules, space, and alternatives. digital curbside management makes the invisible demand visible. So as I was talking all about the data and the monitoring, we through the digital curbside management, we can see who needs space, when, and for how long. We can plan for that, and we can also model for it in the digital space, the digital twin cities that we're developing. Booking, pricing, and data allow loading to happen without blocking pavements. So we can be smart about how we price the use of the curb. And then we have blocking pavement, cycle lanes, crossings, or drop off. So yeah, making sure that we maintain the space for active travel, sustainable travel. And then final call sort of to action is to active travel campaigners that you have a critical role in pushing for curbside reform as core walking, cycling, and air quality infrastructure. It isn't, as I said at the start, it isn't about parking. It is a tool that we can all use if we point the policies from the local authorities in the right direction and get them thinking about curbside as a valuable public space and repurposing it for a greater benefit to the community. This is my final slide. This is actually 200 meters from my house in southwest London. And I didn't manage to get this one lovely picture of where things can go wrong. This is actually a mini Holland, if you all remember the mini Hollands of Kingston, Waltham Forest, and Enfield back in 2016, getting 30 million each to transform cycling, walking, wheeling in their boroughs. This is a mini Holland route, isn't finished yet in Kingston. We've got some ones in there, great, bit of protected cycle lane. But there is a shop which regularly sees deliveries parked up on that pavement. There's a double yellow line, there's a double blip on the curbs, which means there shouldn't be any overloading there, but it still happens. So enforcement's needed maybe, but also a bit of forethought into how the street will actually function once your scheme is in. So don't think just because you put the cycle lane in that the deliveries won't happen. It's more about how do you accommodate and work with the businesses in the area and ensure that you've got the right traffic orders in place to accommodate all activities, and if possible do behavior change. If that delivery could be done by cargo bike, I'd love it. It'd be great. But that's everything from me.
Okay, thank you very much, Leigh, for that run through and a couple of very good and different examples. Clearly, the curbside is a really important space. Thanks for stopping the sharing as well. You've rehearsed well. Good. I've got quite a lot of questions. I expect more will emerge. And so let's fire off. They seem to split into kind of more strategic, almost Lambeth curbside strategy oriented ones, and then ones around the more dynamic parking system that you described. So I'm going to do
challenging me.
Mark's got always got some good questions. I'll do the strategy ones first. I've got one myself first, so I'll take privileges there. I guess this is a more general one. Do you see changes in curbside strategy happening in a big sweeping way, kind of big changes happening all at once, or do you think it will happen more incrementally, sort of street by street, parking space by parking space?
I think, well, in our experience as grid smarter cities, that councils aren't wholesale adopting our solution. For example, Southwark have 7 permanent bays in their borough, in the whole borough, when there's plenty of potential to do a lot more. But I feel like some local authorities are sort of trialing different ideas, different solutions, different innovations before fully adopting, which is perfectly fine. I can completely understand that. And also finances are obviously very difficult to make a big wholesale change if you're not 100% sure. So I think there will be trials of different sort of innovations, solutions in areas, but with the DFT mandating the digitalization of traffic orders and people like Happy Way, I'm sure Mark has a question about Happy Way, which I may or may not be able to answer, but companies who are taking the digital traffic orders and then mapping it, and that does change sort of the interaction of the public and also companies like ours in our ability to sort of have our solutions interact with on the street activities. So the fact that Happyway have digitalized Lambeth's traffic orders allows us in a way to integrate with much easier with their systems and have our booking platform put in various locations a lot quicker, I imagine. That's the aim of it all. So I do think that wholesale change about digitalization traffic orders will make innovation easier on street. But yeah, at the minute I do feel there's a lot of just trialing things.
Right.
Where money allows.
Yes, yeah, well that's fair enough. And the whole world is fairly new to the kerbside strategy, so that may be sort of
it has been interesting to
surprising.
see more and more boroughs, especially in London. I mean, I know other areas have them as well, but there's more and more boroughs having dedicated curbside strategies, which was not a thing not long ago. So the fact that they're introspective and looking at their own, as I said, a valuable asset, and actually measuring what they have and what they can start to charge for. I mean, given their financial difficulties, being able to charge for access to their curbside could a lot of them probably are seeing it as a good answer to their revenue issues. So Hounslow have a curbside strategy. I think Hackney maybe do, but Hounslow even have pictures of our solution in their curbside strategy, but they never asked us for those photos. But yeah, great to have them in there.
Okay. So let me ask Mark's question, seeing as you mentioned it, and it's kind of early in the process of implementing a scheme. So it's essentially on Happyway talking about their system being better for consultation, and what evidence do they give to support that?
Yeah, I can't actually speak for Happyway and say that they've told me in any way that it is better for consultation. It was just my understanding that, from my point of view, the interaction with a map of the traffic orders is a better way to give your views on a traffic order changes in a consultation than it would be sort of the old putting up a notice on a lamppost and writing in or emailing a very generic traffic email address. To be able to write comments on a map, the location I felt was a better way. That's only part of a much wider consultation process, I'd say. So I was talking about commonplace, as people might have heard of. So when you're talking about design ideas and visions for an area, doing on-street engagement, engagement events, using commonplace websites to capture. I was talking to John Little about Beta Streets and their consultation, digital twin developments they're doing at the minute as well. So I think there's plenty of other wider consultation that is good. I just think Happyway has a part to play. Well, not necessarily Happyway, but just that whole mapping of TROs has a part to play in the wider consultation process.
Yeah, I see what we mean. So it's more that map-based approach to gathering input, which I've certainly seen in other software makers doing a similar thing. And
I think it just makes traffic orders seem a little less dry, a little more to people.
I don't know what you mean, but yes, absolutely. Okay, let's go on to I guess some practical questions about the parking management systems, which is can you schedule parking bookings? Can you arrange for it? And one is how long do people get, and can you allow different times? I mean, it's going to take a lot longer to unload a 40 ton truck than a 1.5 ton van. So how do things like that happen, or is it all configurable?
Yeah, so I suppose that's the point. It's configurable. So for us, our solution it is, as I mentioned, it's a tool. So it's really down to the Highways Authority, what their policies are and how they want to use it. So they can set their increments of bookings. You can book multiple increments So if you have a longer booking, you'd book a longer slot. They can set a maximum amount of time as local authority for that area. I know it's a Roof's asked about delivery times in terms of times of day. So again, they could set their hours that they want it to happen. London has its lorry scheme, which limits deliveries at certain times, but yeah, boroughs can set what they want around that. So yeah, it's a configurable solution to manage the deliveries how they want. I mean, the example of our bays in Southwark, it's a busy high street, Walworth Road, just south of Elephant and Castle. There's a Tesco Express just near there. They were having issues previously because they had larger vehicles coming along that would need 2 loading bays. They couldn't park it because there was always someone. Well, there was often somebody would be parked there, so they ended up using a smaller vehicle, which meant they had to do more deliveries. Once our system was in, they could guarantee their slots. They'd come in, and then now they're pretty happy because they could do fewer deliveries with a larger vehicle. We can discuss the whether that is a benefit to certain other active travel having larger vehicles in London, but there are fewer trips. So yeah, there's definite benefits to just being a more managed environment.
Yeah, and how does it manage? How does it get managed? Do you monitor? Do you track the vehicles, or does it book a slot and then to enforce it you would need somebody on the street,
So that
or either way, or is it not your
yeah,
job to do that?
I suppose there's a current situation and then there's a future ideal situation. So currently, it's you would book a slot manually as a dispatch depot manager or as a driver. You book your slot. If you're running late, you can change your slot right up to the actual time of the booking. I think in future, this is the sort of future thinking vision. The vehicles would be linked up in terms of tracking. This is sort of the Internet of Things, everything being connected. So the GPS tracking is linked to the system. So if a vehicle is known it's going to be late, the system would automatically reallocate their booking to someone else who's maybe earlier. It would shuffle things and notify people. It'd be smart like that. Yeah, and then there's things also about the enforcement side. Currently, we rely on the local authorities to enforce it. If there is a vehicle that shouldn't be parked in the bay, you can report it through our platform. So there's a rogue vehicle function where, and this answers Mark's second question, but you press the rogue vehicle, it notifies the local enforcement officers to come and enforce against that vehicle, which is good for the local authority because it targets their enforcement activities rather than them just doing random checks. But I think in future, all local authorities will probably be pretty keen on camera enforcement. It's not legally allowed currently on, I think, static traffic orders like parking enforcement. But in the future, if DfT changed the rules, you would be able to just put up cameras that would link to our booking system. So as soon as a vehicle turns into the curbside and its number plate is recognized by the camera, it's checked with our system, it knows it's not on there and it doesn't have a booking, then it would immediately be issued with a penalty charge notice. I believe that is possible in America, and I think some American cities do already do that, but not in our traffic laws. I'm sure someone on this call would know, probably Mark.
Yeah, well done for spotting and answering Mark's next question, which is yeah, interesting. I can see. I mean, you can see it evolving as camera and processing technology get cheaper. AI of the future will be detecting it. Maybe there's a human in the loop to say, yes, that's an offence. No, it's not an offence.
Yeah.
Presses the button and boof,
And
ticket
that would
goes
link
off.
into sort of routing efficiency as well. So all these delivery companies would get their AI would be routing their vehicle depending on traffic and availability of deliveries to the most efficient routes. So,
Quite possibly. I was reading about a MIT a system which considered parking availability that could be plugged into a sat nav system. So
yes.
your sat nav would think about where you're most likely to find a parking space, not just
Yeah,
where the shortest route was.
and they were using that to encourage people to park further and walk, weren't they? 'Cause they were saying people's
yeah,
perceptions
yeah.
of the driving in, they would wait longer in congestion and still think driving was the best option. Well, the MIT solution would point into a parking space and say, well, actually, if you just walked 5 minutes, the overall journey would be quicker.
I mean, I'm thinking hopefully it will tell them it takes so long to find a parking space, you might as well ride your bike instead.
I suppose this is where policy needs to keep up with technology. But yes,
Absolutely. Mark, have you got a question you'd like to ask directly?
Well, just on that note, so San Francisco do exactly that, but they do it slightly differently. They don't do it through cameras. They do it through transponders in the parking bays, so they can have a live information
Yes.
about demand. So I was just wondering if that was the next step. But to do that, each vehicle would have to have some sort of digital Bluetooth ID. I mean, they obviously already have something, but then you'd know that that vehicle was in that bay at that time. So what they do in San Francisco, they do exactly what you just said. They can in live time feedback to your sat nav and say, go and park somewhere else, that bay's full. But for deliveries, it would be a smaller, limited category of vehicle rather than just every car having a transponder.
yeah, and lots of fleets, vehicles, large fleets are already tracking all their vehicles. They have all that sort of telematics that they could share if it was part of, like, they were bought into the solution. Like I say, how Tesco's have seen the advantage, maybe if they were willing to share that information, we could make that part of the system. But yeah, I'd see that being part of the future.
Yeah, yeah. And I know that some London bays have sensors in them to detect whether there's a vehicle. I don't think it can detect the number plate or anything. It just detects whether there's a hunk of metal sitting above it. Good, good. Another question from Ruth, who is not able to unmute, unfortunately, at the moment. So she's keen to know if there is any work on whether taxis or private hire vehicles, including Uber, have can be restricted to parking in specific places or have been in parking in specific places. Of course, taxi ranks have existed from time immemorial, but anything in these electronic systems.
Yeah, well, I think that was sort of my side about the future. I think it's more of a policy question rather than the technical solution. It's possible, technically. It's whether it's the consideration of these things are coming down the line, especially the autonomous vehicles, the Waymo taxis, and other brands. But where do you put them? Where are they allowed to access? Where do they stop and start? First priority in the parking, all of those things. These are policy questions which these local authorities have to start tackling. In the micro-mobility, the dockless bikes, there's this whole question different boroughs are putting them in corrals or just in parking bays, which is cycle hire, or they're putting them on pavements, or they're doing a mix of all these things, or they're just letting them go anywhere. It's kind of the same question, I suppose. It's like, well, how do you allocate your curb space? And that's a policy question. But the technology is there to control it. The traffic orders are there, but what's your policy? So ask your local council.
Yeah, it's a question of policy. The technology will do anything. Okay, that's good. The Peter from Oxford, who I know, is asks a question about whether it will be compatible. Will it support ISA? Now I know ISA as a savings product, but I suspect he means something else, and I'm not quite sure what. And I've tried to ask him what he means. So, Peter, if you're still there, you're welcome to come in and explain, ask the question, or maybe Leigh will say, "Oh, yes, I know what he means." Nope, not this time. So, Peter.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes,
yeah,
we can.
I think it's completely irrelevant. ISA means intelligent speed assist because I know that some mapping solutions for intelligent speed assist do like real-time changes to
to traffic flow, or blockages, or suddenly roadworks going up and things like that. So, but I think it's probably irrelevant for curbside. So it was a bit of a rabbit hole I went down temporarily.
Okay, right. Which reminds me, it is worth having a look at the consultations that are attached to the road safety strategy, on which there are some very good ones on both on the 18-odd vehicle safety technologies, but also on motoring offences. In the motoring offences, there are things that a lot of people here will want to support, and if you work through the consultations, there's quite a lot of consultation to work through, but you will find it very rewarding and positive, some of the things that are being proposed there. And one other question, and somebody mentioned it in the chat as well, it's not quite the curbside because this is a bit more onto the pavement, but there's a bit of possibly a couple of connections here, which is BT and there may be other providers as well, putting in planning applications for digital hubs on the pavement. So these would have advertising in, they would have 5G base stations in, Wi-Fi as well, no doubt, 2 and a bit meters high, 2.3 meters high, the size of an advertising hoarding, so quite bulky things. We've seen applications for them here in Oxford. Francis says that they are planned in Horsham, which is quite a nice little town, and probably other places as well, as BT is not a small corporation. We like to walk as well as cycle, and having things blocking the pavements is not a good thing, usually, even if they're providing digital services. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think again, it's a question of what is the policy of those local authorities and what they're trying to achieve by this. I remember when I was at Kingston and we had the funding for the Mini Holland. As soon as we knew we had the 30 million to do all this work, we had all these companies approach us about, we've got, well, people like Cycle, we've got cycle stands, we could put maintenance stands, we could put in on the pavement, we can put in pumps, public cycle pumps. I had a company, I remember it was like similar to the Legible London, putting up the maps for navigating, for walking, which sounded great, but they also wanted to tie in advertising, so it became a big advertising hoarding. The upshot of all this is that we're getting lots of people saying they wanted to put stuff on pavements. And sometimes cluttering your pavement isn't really the answer. So I think I learned the hard way when I was at Kingston. I was responsible for putting lots of cycle parking in, which wasn't always in the right locations. But I just think, sometimes local authorities may rush to put in something new, rather than and maybe not consider the wider the wider urban landscape there in that area. Is this the street scene they're trying to achieve? Normally there's a highways team doing one thing, the maintenance team begging them not to do it because they don't want to look after the new assets that are going in, and then they're probably an urban realm or land, a planning team who sort of have their heritage hat on, or particular street design hat on, and say, well, this doesn't fit with what we're trying to do anyway. So I think, again, it's basically throwing it back to the local authority and saying, what is your overall vision for our town centre or city streets? So what is your design palette, and where does this fit this huge 2.3 meter high advertising hoarding? Is it just about the money and you need the money? Is it about you need that connection, the 5G connection? Who's it really benefiting? How does it fit with all your various policies and strategies around active travel or your sustainability goals and things like that? It's just questions that need to be asked.
Right. And on that note, Mark has put in the chat, I see that proposals for these in outside Hove Town Hall have been turned down, and the tech firm, I'm guessing BT, has appealed that. So yeah, it's about, as you say, it's about having the policy straight, it's all up to the council and the councillors, and so as campaigners, our job is to influence them, and their job is to get elected, and based on the back of those policies. Right, I see no more questions, but that was a really good discussion, and thank you very much, Leigh. That was a great presentation, good discussion. Next week, we are going to have Kate Carpenter from the Chartered Institute of Highways and Transportation, who is going to talk about the consequences of inequitable access to healthy, safe and effective and affordable transport, and how that affects people's lives. That would be a great topic, I'm sure. And also Ranty Highway will be back and talking about side road zebras. A great topic. I knew I was really into the scene when I typed in implicit into my phone, and the auto suggested the next word was zebra. That's how your phone tells you you are deeply into active travel. So I will look forward to that next week, and hope you all travel safely and have a great week. Bye for now.
Thanks all.